Police announced tonight they arrested a juvenile in connection to her death.
Her body was found yesterday morning off a walking trail in Chippewa Falls. Today, her aunt's home, where she was last seen, was searched and blocked off with police tape. It's just half a mile from where her body was found.
Years back or change what happened. We are very grateful to be able to deliver this news for the family and for the community.
The chief indicated a boy younger than 18 was in custody, saying Lily knew him.
We do not believe there is any danger to the community at this time.
Since this like this happens, we become strong and we're going to grow as a community.
A quiet April evening in Chippewa Falls suddenly turned into a living nightmare when a 10-year-old girl vanished just blocks away from her home. But the most horrifying part wasn't her disappearance, it was the blood-chilling truth behind it. The predator wasn't some stranger lurking in the shadows, it was her own 14-year-old cousin. He meticulously planned the attack, lured her to her death, committed unimaginably brutal acts, and then calmly went home to wash his blood-stained clothes, as if nothing had happened. What unfolded next was not just a hunt for justice, but the exposure of a twisted family harboring the most sinister secrets. Your blood will boil when you realize what it took for the law to finally face this monster.
Can you show me how you...
Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, is the kind of picturesque, tight-knit community where everyone knows their neighbors. It's a place of quiet streets, local heritage, and peaceful walking trails. Living right in the heart of this idyllic town was 10-year-old Ileana Lily Peters. Lily was a bright, radiant fourth grader with an infectious smile that could light up any room. She loved being outdoors, hanging out with her friends, and most of all, riding her beloved bicycle around her neighborhood. Sunday, April 24, 2022 started out like any other lazy spring weekend. At around 3 p.m., Lily hopped on her bike to visit her aunt's house. It wasn't a journey into the unknown, her aunt lived a mere 4 blocks away. It was a route Lily had taken countless times, a simple, safe 5-minute ride that no one ever thought twice about. But as the afternoon hours melted into the evening and the sun began to dip below the horizon, a creeping sense of dread settled over Lily's father. She hadn't come home. When he frantically called his sister to check on Lily, his heart stopped at her response. Lily had left the house over an hour ago. She should have been home by now. Panic immediately ensued. He called her friends, scoured the neighborhood, and frantically retraced her route, but Lily was nowhere to be found. By 9 p.m., suffocated by terror, her father made the agonizing call to the police to report his little girl missing. What struck me the most was how a 5-minute bike ride could turn into a parent's worst nightmare. Desperate to find her, Lily's father pleaded with authorities to issue an Amber Alert. Every single second mattered. But in a twist that left the family and the public absolutely furious, the police refused. According to official protocol, Lily's disappearance did not meet the strict criteria required to trigger the alert system. There was no confirmed abduction, no specific suspect, and no vehicle description. This rigid bureaucracy sparked an instant firestorm of outrage across the community. How could a 10-year-old girl vanish into the dark without the highest alarm being sounded? Despite the lack of an Amber Alert, the town refused to sleep. A frantic search through the dark streets began as hundreds of volunteers, K-9 units and officers scoured the area. Flashlights pierced through the frigid night, sweeping across the dense, isolating woods bordering the local walking trails. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, the chilling reality of the situation echoed through the police dispatch radios, a moment captured in the official records.
City MS can respond to the Liney's parking lot reference, the missing child. You can respond to the Liney's parking lot close to that pig alley. There'll be somebody waiting for you. Law enforcement's en route.
Little did they know, the nightmare was only just beginning. As the clock ticked past midnight, the frantic search for 10-year-old Lily Peters escalated into a desperate race against time. The usually quiet town of Chippewa Falls was completely transformed. Hundreds of exhausted but determined volunteers, local law enforcement, and specialized K-9 units descended upon the dense, sprawling woods surrounding the local walking trail. Drones buzzed continuously overhead, their thermal cameras trying to pierce through the pitch-black canopy, while a sea of flashlights frantically swept across the unforgiving, rugged terrain. Every rustle of leaves, every snapped twig sent a jolt of desperate hope through the searchers. But as the agonizing hours dragged on, that hope slowly mutated into a suffocating, icy dread. The first devastating clue emerged in the early hours of the morning when searchers stumbled upon Lily's beloved bicycle. It wasn't just casually abandoned on the side of the trail or accidentally dropped. It had been deliberately and carefully hidden deep within the brush. This wasn't the scene of a child who had simply wandered off or gotten lost in the dark. This was the terrifying, undeniable signature of a predator trying to cover their tracks. The moment that bike was discovered, the atmosphere in the woods shifted entirely. The collective heart of the community sank. When the sun finally broke through the trees on Monday morning, it didn't bring warmth or comfort. It brought a horrifying, world-shattering reality. At approximately 9:15 a.m., the massive search effort came to a devastating, heartbreaking halt. Just yards away from the walking trail, intentionally concealed under a thick, heavy pile of dirt, broken branches, and dry leaves, searchers found the lifeless body of sweet, innocent Lily. The cries of pure anguish that echoed through those woods that morning are the kind that will haunt the town of Chippewa Falls forever. She had been brutally taken from this world, just minutes away from the safety of her own home. This is where the story takes a dark turn into pure, unimaginable evil. The details from the autopsy report unveiled a level of violence that left even the most seasoned, hardened investigators completely sick to their stomachs. Lily didn't just pass away, she was subjected to absolute, unimaginable terror. The medical examiner discovered 3 severe blunt force trauma wounds to the left side of her head, brutally inflicted by a heavy stick. But the horror didn't stop there. There were distinct, undeniable signs of brutal manual strangulation. The perpetrator had choked the life out of this terrified little girl with their bare hands. And then, in an act of profound, sickening depravity, the monster sexually assaulted her body. The sheer brutality of this calculated attack was later laid bare in the courtroom, leaving the entire gallery in stunned silence. District Attorney Wade Newell stood before the judge and delivered a statement that chilled everyone to the very bone.
When he did get off of the trail, punched the victim in the stomach, knocked her to the ground, essentially strangled her, hit her with a stick before strangling her to the point of death before he then sexually assaulted.
Hearing those exact words, realizing the sheer agony and profound fear this 10-year-old girl went through in her final moments is completely devastating. Does this make your blood boil too? The entire town was paralyzed with fear, locking their doors and holding their children tight, terrified that a deranged drifter was hunting in their quiet streets. But law enforcement's focus abruptly shifted away from the dark alleys and landed right on the family's own doorstep. On the evening of April 26th, police cruisers swarmed the house at 422 North Grove Street, the home of Lily's aunt, and the exact place the 10-year-old was last seen alive. Officers executed a search warrant, carrying critical bags of evidence out into the night. Shortly after, authorities stood before the press and delivered an announcement that completely shattered the community. An arrest had been made. The predator wasn't a faceless stranger lurking in the shadows. The monster was the victim's own blood. They arrested Lily's 14-year-old cousin, Carson Peters Berger. It is almost impossible to comprehend how a simple family visit could end in such a horrific betrayal. If you appreciate the work we do to uncover the truth and seek justice for innocent victims like Lily, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Your support truly helps the channel keep shedding light on these devastating cases. The horrifying truth is that investigators didn't have to chase this killer across state lines. The vital clue came from inside the family. According to official reports, the breakthrough happened when Carson's own grandmother contacted authorities. In a deeply disturbing twist, after committing the unspeakable crime, Carson allegedly returned home and casually confessed to his younger sister. Relatives noted that he spoke about the murder with an eerie, chilling smile. Terrified by what she heard, the young sister confided in her grandmother, who instantly realized the predator the town was hunting was sleeping under her own roof. When investigators brought the 14-year-old in for questioning, they likely expected tears, denial, or at least a shred of remorse. Instead, they were met with a terrifyingly calm and calculated demeanor. Carson recounted the events of that fateful Sunday with disturbing ease. He admitted that he had escorted Lily from the house. While she pedaled her bike, he rolled alongside her on his hoverboard. As they approached the familiar walking trail, he suggested a detour. He deliberately lured his innocent younger cousin off the safe path and deep into the dense, isolating woods under the guise of exploring a shortcut. He didn't just snap. This wasn't a tragic accident born out of a sudden, heated argument. During the interrogation, the chilling reality of his dark mind was laid completely bare in the official records. "Detective, when did you plan to do this?" "Carson, I intended to rape and kill her from the moment we left the house. I gotta be honest with you." Hearing a 14-year-old admit to premeditated murder with such ease is bone-chilling. He had consciously mapped out the brutal demise of his own blood relative before they even stepped off the front porch. The level of sociopathic detachment required to look your sweet, trusting 10-year-old cousin in the eye, knowing exactly what you are about to do to her, defies all human logic. He watched her smile, watched her push her bike, all while a sinister countdown ticked away in his mind. What kind of darkness has to reside inside a young teenager to execute such a ruthless, cold-blooded plan? No one could have predicted what happened next. After committing acts of unimaginable violence against his 10-year-old cousin, 14-year-old Carson Peters Berger didn't break down in tears, panic, or call for help. Instead, he simply walked away from the horrors he had just inflicted, leaving Sweet Lily's broken body behind in the dirt. According to the official criminal complaint, he casually headed back to his house, stepped inside as if it were just another ordinary Sunday evening, and took a shower. He carefully gathered up his dirty, evidence-laden clothes and threw them into the laundry, systematically washing away the physical traces of his brutal crime. He seamlessly blended right back into the household routine, acting completely normal while the rest of the family slowly began to realize that Lily was missing. But the nightmare was only just beginning. As the sun set and the agonizing terror set in, the frantic search commenced. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the desperate voices of terrified relatives and neighbors echoed through the dark woods. Hearing the commotion and realizing people were actively out looking for the little girl, Carson didn't step forward to end his family's excruciating torment. He didn't confess. Instead, a twisted sense of self-preservation kicked in. Under the cover of darkness, this 14-year-old boy snuck back out to the crime scene. He approached the lifeless body of the cousin he had just brutalized, dragged her a few feet further into the dense brush, and deliberately piled heavy leaves, dirt, and branches over her to ensure she wouldn't be found. The level of cold, calculating detachment required to return to the scene and conceal your own family member is absolutely staggering. Then comes the detail that will truly make you sick to your stomach. The following evening, after Lily's body was finally discovered and the town was engulfed in profound grief, the Chippewa Falls community held a vigil to mourn the tragic loss of the bright, radiant fourth grader. And who was standing right there in the crowd? Carson. Witnesses reported seeing the teenager at the memorial, boldly inserting himself directly into the epicenter of the tragedy. He stood shoulder to shoulder with the very people whose lives he had just violently destroyed. He was seen offering condolences and physically hugging Lily's devastated family members, comforting them for a nightmare that he himself had orchestrated. I couldn't stop thinking about how anyone, let alone a young teenager, could compartmentalize such sheer, sinister evil. To look into the tear-filled eyes of a grieving relative, wrap your arms around them, and offer comfort while knowing you are the monster who stole their little girl's life requires a level of psychopathy that is terrifying to even comprehend. He wore the mask of a grieving cousin flawlessly, hiding the blood on his hands right in plain sight. What do you guys make of this kind of cold-blooded behavior? But what no one knew was that monsters are rarely born, they are meticulously forged in the darkest of environments. To truly understand the sheer brutality of this 14-year-old's actions, investigators had to peel back the rotting layers of his family tree. This is where the story takes a dark turn into the origins of a killer. Carson Peters Berger did not grow up in a safe, nurturing home. His biological father, Adam Berger, was a convicted predator. In 2018, Adam was sentenced to 3 years in prison after authorities caught him in a massive sting operation, finding him in possession of highly illegal, explicit images of underage, prepubescent girls. He even disturbingly superimposed his own face onto some of the horrifying photos. Knowing that the man who helped bring Carson into the world was a documented threat to children casts a sickening, irredeemable shadow over the entire tragedy. However, the toxic influence didn't stop at the prison gates. The boy's mother had her own troubled history, carrying a rap sheet that included substance abuse and battery charges. The household was a chaotic, unstable environment, further poisoned by the presence of her boyfriend, John Repetto. A quick look into Repetto's publicly accessible Facebook page revealed a terrifyingly twisted mindset that was allowed to fester right in front of a developing teenager. Repetto consistently posted deeply disturbing memes that glorified infamous serial killers like Ed Gein. His feed was a horrifying gallery of inappropriate, violent jokes and sickening posts making light of abuse. This was the decaying ecosystem Carson was submerged in every single day, surrounded by a legacy of drug use, predatory behavior, and a complete absence of a moral compass. This household was the perfect, terrifying incubator to mold a troubled adolescent into a cold-blooded monster. The nightmare was only just beginning to unravel as digital clues pointed to a sinister game of cat and mouse. Before Lily's body was even pulled from the brush, a chilling breadcrumb was dropped on the internet. A Reddit user operating under the moniker HomesliceNation4 suddenly posted on a thread discussing Lily's disappearance. The anonymous user claimed they had been playing Pokémon Go in the park that exact day, walking along the very same isolated trail. The post eerily described seeing a little girl in a pink and purple hoodie riding her bike with a slightly older kid, before adding a terrifyingly accurate prediction. I have suspicion that it could be another kid that did it. It was a detail so specific, so perfectly aligned with the horrific truth, that it immediately sent shivers down the spines of everyone following the case. Shortly after dropping that damning clue, the Reddit account vanished into thin air, completely scrubbed from the platform. But the internet leaves a trail, and disturbing rumors soon surfaced that years prior, this exact same user had allegedly posted a chilling, prophetic, "I'll kill my cousins before anyone else gets a chance." This part really makes my blood boil when you realize that this 10-year-old's brutal murder wasn't just a random act of violence, but the horrific climax of years of unchecked, generational depravity. Does it make you furious to think that this toxic family dynamic essentially handed a loaded psychological weapon to a 14-year-old boy? The legal battle over Carson Petersberger was a high-stakes war between the pursuit of accountability and a defense team desperate to keep a cold-blooded killer out of prison. In the state of Wisconsin, the law is rigid. Any child 10 years or older accused of first-degree intentional homicide must automatically begin their legal journey in adult court. This was the battlefield where Carson's attorneys launched a reverse waiver petition, a frantic legal maneuver to move the case down to the juvenile system. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If they succeeded, a convicted murderer might be released as early as age 21. If they failed, he faced multiple life sentences behind the cold steel bars of a state prison. During the intense, multi-day hearings, the defense brought in a series of psychological experts to argue that Carson was not a predator, but a child with a shattered, undeveloped mind. They diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, persistent depressive disorder, and severe anxiety. One doctor testified that Carson's emotional maturity was that of a child only 4 to 6 years old, and his social functioning was no better than a kindergartner. They claimed his addiction to pornography, exacerbated by his autism, had triggered a temporary adolescent crisis that led to the violence. They argued that the adult prison system was far too harsh and lacked the intensive, one-on-one therapy Carson supposedly needed to be rehabilitated. I gotta be honest with you, hearing these arguments makes my blood boil. It felt like they were asking the world to ignore the cold, calculated planning that went into Lily's death, just because the killer allegedly had the emotional capacity of a toddler. I couldn't stop thinking about how the defense tried to weaponize a medical diagnosis to excuse such a sinister act. But the prosecution stood their ground. They pointed to the chilling evidence: the hoverboard, the stick, the deliberate luring into the woods, and the systematic, multi-step cover-up of the body. These were not the impulsive, confused mistakes of a kindergartner. They were the actions of a lucid killer who knew exactly how to hide a crime and then comfort a grieving family afterward. For 2 long years, the case hung in a tense legal limbo, leaving Lily's family in an agonizing state of uncertainty. But in September 2024, the Wisconsin Court of Appeals finally broke the silence. In a landmark decision, the 3-judge panel upheld the lower court's ruling, officially keeping the trial in adult court. The court found that the trial judge had used a rational process to determine that the sheer brutality of the crime outweighed Carson's alleged mental impairments. For Lily's community, it was a moment of profound, albeit painful relief. The monster who stole their little girl would QBCNG have to face the full weight of adult justice. As the courtroom drama unfolded, a parallel battle was being fought in the court of public opinion. Lily's father had been denied an Amber Alert on the night she vanished, because the case didn't meet strict federal criteria. There was no vehicle description, and no confirmed abduction at the hour he called. This failure sparked a massive outcry, leading to a petition signed by over 130,000 people to create the Lily Alert. This proposed statewide system would allow police to bypass the rigid federal rules and issue an immediate alert whenever a child goes missing under suspicious circumstances. Does this make your blood boil too? Why should a child's life depend on whether or not a witness saw a specific car? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The push for the Lily Alert stands as a symbol of the community's refusal to let Lily's death be in vain. It was a rally for every child in Wisconsin, a promise that next time, the system would not wait while a predator was on the move. With the 2024 ruling and a trial date now set for November 2, 2026, the wheels of justice are turning slowly, but they are turning. The legal chess match is almost over, and the final move will determine the ultimate accountability for the monster in the family. More than 4 years have passed since that horrific April night changed Chippewa Falls forever, yet the wounds of this small town remain wide open. The streets where Lily once rode her bike now carry a different atmosphere, more cautious, more somber. But finally, after a series of dark twists and the defense's desperate attempts to cling to any loophole, the light of justice has begun to pierce through the black clouds hanging over the Peters family. The ending we have all been waiting for has finally come to light. With the Wisconsin Court of Appeals officially rejecting every argument regarding autism spectrum disorder or a low mental age, Carson Peters Berger now has nowhere left to run. This monster will have to face the grimmest reality, being tried as an adult murderer, facing charges of first-degree intentional homicide and sexual assault of a child. Carson is looking at a life sentence without the possibility of freedom. This is not just a legal verdict. It is a salvation for Lily's soul and for a community deeply scarred by a betrayal from within their own home. If you feel a sense of relief knowing that this predator will pay dearly for his actions, please take a second to subscribe to the channel right now. Your support is the strength that allows me to continue bringing the darkest truths to light and demanding justice for victims like Lily. The final day of judgment has been set for November 2, 2026. Although the wait may feel agonizingly long, it is a necessary silence to ensure that every piece of evidence is laid bare and not a single loophole remains for the killer to escape the law's punishment. While Carson must count each day in the isolation of detention, outside, Chippewa Falls has chosen to remember Lily in the most beautiful way. Throughout the town, purple, Lily's favorite color, has become a symbol of hope and resilience. Purple benches have been solemnly placed in the park where she used to play, near the church and her old elementary school. They sit there, quiet under the sun, as an affirmation that Lily will forever be 10 years old, forever radiant, and forever the angel protected by the entire town. Those benches are places for people to sit, to remember Lily's smile, and to remind one another that while darkness may lurk, light will always prevail. Finally, justice is on the horizon, and we can only hope this brings some sense of relief to Lily's family. Looking back at this entire journey, from the moment the bicycle was left behind in the woods to the unwavering verdict of the court, we see the devastating power of evil, but we also see the unyielding resilience of justice. What do you guys think? Does this ending bring you any sense of relief? Is a life sentence enough to make up for what Lily had to endure? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to know how you feel after following this haunting journey to the end. I'll keep digging if there's more to uncover. Thanks for watching and for all the comments you guys make this worth it. Stay safe, look after your loved ones, and I'll see you in the next case.